Many people spend years believing that love is something to be earned, that if they work hard enough, prove their loyalty, and say all the right things, the person they desire will finally see their worth. Carl Jung would say this belief stems not from love, but from deep-seated insecurity rooted in the unconscious. This illusion turns relationships into emotional battlegrounds, where one endlessly chases validation, mistaking attention for affection. Jung emphasized that the human psyche is driven by hidden forces, many of which operate beneath awareness. When someone chases love, what they're truly seeking is approval, often to heal old wounds that originated in childhood. But the more one runs after another, the more distant that person becomes. Jung believed that the more we cling to the external, the more disconnected we become from our inner truth. Love, he taught, begins not with pursuit, but with presence. There comes a moment when exhaustion outweighs desire, when the emotional strain of chasing someone becomes unbearable. This turning point often feels like defeat, but Carl Jung would argue it is the beginning of true transformation. Jung believed that meaningful change only occurs when the conscious mind confronts the unconscious patterns driving behavior. In that stillness, after the chase ends, space opens for clarity to emerge. The silence that once felt like rejection now becomes a mirror reflecting the real source of pain. It is not the person who was chased, but the inner emptiness that fueled the pursuit. Jung's theory of individuation teaches that growth begins when we stop looking outward for completion and begin the inward journey toward wholeness. The act of letting go is not weakness. It is a conscious rebellion against a life ruled by fear. In that pause, something sacred happens. The soul begins to awaken. Carl Jung believed that what draws us to another person is rarely about them. It is about us. Behind every infatuation, every longing, and every obsessive pursuit lies a hidden truth. We are often chasing a part of ourselves we have lost or disowned. Jung's concept of psychological projection explains this clearly. According to him, the traits we find mesmerizing in others, confidence, passion, emotional strength, are often qualities we have suppressed within ourselves. When we fall for someone intensely, Jung would say we are not truly seeing them as they are, but rather as a mirror of our unmet inner needs. This is why the chase can feel so urgent and addictive. It is not about love. It is about reclaiming something internal. Jung taught that until we reintegrate these missing parts of the self, we will keep projecting them outward and chasing shadows instead of wholeness. Carl Jung's theory of projection reveals one of the most unsettling truths about human attraction. We don't just see people as they are, we see them as reflections of our inner world. When someone becomes the object of intense desire, it's often because they appear to possess something we believe we lack. Their confidence highlights our insecurity. Their emotional availability mirrors the love we've been withholding from ourselves. Jung taught that what we deny or repress doesn't disappear. It lives in the unconscious and seeks expression through others. So when we chase someone, we may actually be chasing the validation, security, or self-worth we haven't yet found within. This mirror effect creates a powerful illusion that we need them to feel whole. But Jung warned that as long as we remain unaware of these projections, our relationships will be based on fantasy rather than reality. Healing begins when we reclaim the mirror and look inward. Carl Jung often emphasized that the journey toward wholeness begins with self-acceptance. For those who have spent years chasing others, hoping to be seen, chosen, or loved, this idea can feel radical. But Jung would argue that the longing to be chosen is rooted in an unconscious belief that we are not enough as we are. The moment we place our worth in another's hands, we surrender our power. Jung taught that individuation, the process of becoming one's true self, requires turning inward, even if it means standing alone. Instead of begging for love, he believed we must become the source of it. To choose oneself is to stop living for validation and to begin living from authenticity. It's a quiet inner revolution. And as Jung would say, once the unconscious is made conscious, we are no longer ruled by it. We begin, for the first time, to truly live. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the collective unconscious, a reservoir of inherited beliefs, instincts, and archetypes shared by all humans. These unconscious patterns don't just shape how we dream, they shape how we love. Many of us carry internalized scripts that tell us love must involve struggle, sacrifice, or emotional suffering. Jung believed these ideas were not entirely our own, but echoes from generations past, stories absorbed from culture, family, and society. When someone chases love, they may unknowingly be following one of these ancient scripts, believing that hardship equals worth, or that being chosen means being valuable. Jung would caution that unless we question these narratives, we are destined to repeat them. We confuse longing with love, pain with passion, and dependency with devotion. To truly evolve, Jung believed we must bring these unconscious patterns into awareness and consciously rewrite the story we've been told about what love is supposed to be. Carl Jung believed that healing begins the moment we challenge the unconscious patterns that govern our lives. When we stop chasing someone and instead reflect on why we felt the need to run after them, we begin to take back authorship of our own story. Most people live by inherited scripts, deeply ingrained beliefs about love, worth, and identity, passed down through family, media, and culture. Jung would call this the influence of archetypes and the collective unconscious, but he also believed in the individual's power to rewrite those internal narratives, to choose peace over chaos, self-worth over desperation. Jung taught that through individuation, we become the protagonist of our own life, no longer acting out someone else's tragedy. Rewriting your story means asking hard questions, embracing discomfort, and consciously choosing a path rooted in self-respect. Only then does love become something genuine, an extension of wholeness, not a plea for completion. Letting go is often mistaken for giving up, but Carl Jung would describe it as a powerful act of transformation. When someone finally releases the need to chase another person, what initially follows is fear. Fear of loneliness, of being forgotten, of never being loved again. But Jung believed that fear is often the voice of the ego resisting growth. As the fear fades, something deeper begins to rise: clarity. In that stillness, a person begins to realize that love doesn't need to be hunted or begged for. Jung taught that true love arises naturally when we are aligned with our authentic self. And that alignment only comes when we stop forcing connections that are not meant for us. The more we focus on our own growth, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the more our relationships begin to reflect that wholeness. In Jung's view, the act of letting go is not loss, it is liberation. One of Carl Jung's most powerful contributions to psychology is the concept of the shadow, the hidden, often uncomfortable parts of ourselves that we reject or deny. These are the traits we've been told are unlovable: our neediness, our anger, our deep fear of abandonment. When someone constantly chases another person, Jung would argue that this behavior is not driven by love, but by an unacknowledged fear of being alone, of not being enough, of not being worthy without external validation. These fears live in the shadow, and until we turn and face them, we remain trapped in patterns that sabotage our happiness. Jung believed that true healing comes not from avoiding the shadow, but from integrating it, bringing light into the darkest corners of the psyche. When we stop running from what's inside us, we stop chasing what's outside us. In facing the shadow, we reclaim the power we once gave away. Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity to explain those moments when life seems to align with uncanny precision, when events unfold not by chance, but by meaning. He believed that when we begin living in harmony with our true self, the external world starts to reflect that inner order. This is what often happens when someone stops chasing love. By no longer forcing outcomes or clinging to people who aren't meant for them, they create space for something far more authentic to emerge. Jung taught that synchronicity is not about control, it's about alignment. The right people appear not because we pursued them, but because we became someone who no longer needed to. In letting go, we step into a flow where life no longer feels like a battle. Peace replaces panic. Presence replaces pursuit. And as Jung so beautifully put it, who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. That awakening changes everything.